You may not like it, but the Guardians being swept by the Mets proved Chris Antonetti right about one of his pre-trade deadline theories, and now it's on the staff and the team to bail themselves out heading in to a must-win series.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. I am Justin Lada. This is Locked On Guardians, your only daily Cleveland Guardians podcast that covers your team every day from the majors, the minors, the draft, and everything in between. Jeff off again tonight, so you got just me. And later on in the show, we are going to get you ready for the White Sox series that might be a must-win for the Guardians because it's going to decide where they go over the final stretch of the season against the White Sox in the division in the playoff race. For that, we'll have an uncomfortable conversation about where things are headed with this staff over the last year and the situations they've been facing, including the two-time Manager of the Year award winner. But first, we start with the Guardians being swept by the Mets and what Chris Antonetti was right about. And before the trade deadline, this is what Chris Antonetti said. Quote, most importantly, we need to make sure we're doing what we can with the group that's here to help them continue to get better, because no matter who we bring in from the outside, no one or two people are going to change the trajectory of our season. We need the group that is here to continue to work towards playing towards their potential. And he was 100% right. The Guardians did bring in 3 new additions to this team, 4 if you count Craig Yoho, who didn't really help the team in this series. They got swept, and he had a rough day on Thursday in the blowout loss. However, in the series, you got 4 hits, a home run, and 4 RBI from Nathaniel Lowe. You had a 2-hit debut from Joe Adell, a couple other walks. You had a 4-for-5 debut from Angel Genao on Wednesday night. Foster Griffin's debut could have gone better, but he wasn't the reason the Guardians lost on Thursday. He didn't pitch well, but the Guardians did a lot of other things themselves. And that's exactly what Chris Antonetti was talking about. Now, some of the guys they talked about, Kyle Manzardo had to get better, and he went down, and Rhys Hoskins is still here, and he has to get better. And David Fry went down. He was one of the guys as well. But he's talking about all the guys on this team that are here. They all have to play better fundamentally. Now, the Guardians didn't make an error on Thursday. We can say that it didn't show up in the box score. There was one weird play where a runner was stealing second, and Angel Genao looks like he was supposed to be covering the bag to get the throw. And he wasn't there to get the throw. He did catch it, but he wasn't there to receive it and tag the runner out. So that's not an error in the box score. It's a bit of a mental error. But you want to know what? That play also didn't lead to the demise of the Guardians on Thursday. So they scored 6 runs. Foster Griffin gave up 5, including 2 homers. The bullpen, once again, was a mess. Matt Festa comes in and allows a run. You have Craig Yoho, who allowed a 3-run homer to Francisco Lindor that made it 9-5 after the Guardians climbed all the way back to 6-5. Of course, that twisted the knife a little bit deeper, right? That it was coming from Francisco Lindor. Who, by the way, the Guardians were torching this series. He was totally dominated and overwhelmed until this game when he had 2 hits, including that home run. And then Slade Ciccone, who's adjusting to a new role. And I know some people say that's making an excuse, but it's true. These guys are still human. This is a new thing in the middle of the season you're asking him to do. He came in and just didn't have it, flat out. 4 hits, 2 walks, 3 hits. Tim Herron came in, a walk and a hit, and you had to use Austin Hedges. They used 3 pitchers to get through the 8th inning. Ciccone and Herron, and then we'll call Austin Hedges the 3rd pitcher. They needed 3 pitchers to get through the 8th inning, to get the Guardians through the end of the game. Austin Hedges had to get 4 outs. What an excitement buzz killer for what was a great trade deadline for the Guardians to come out and get swept by the New York Mets, who traded 30% of their roster away. Now, a lot of that didn't include any hitters. They mostly traded pitchers, and they came in and hit the ball against the Guardians. So there's that. But they had a bunch of new relievers, and guess what? The Guardians didn't do enough against their bullpen to win And when they did, they made errors. The Guardians had 10 hits and six runs in this game. They had 4 walks. Now, one was in garbage time. One of those runs was in garbage time. So we'll call it 5 runs and 3 walks. All off Nolan McLean, by the way, who is one of the nastiest pitchers in baseball. I know he's kind of struggled here a little bit in the second half, but he's got some of the nastiest stuff in baseball if you're not aware. He is an extremely talented pitcher. He's going to be one of the best players in the league for a long time here. They got 5 runs off him. They loaded the bases early against him. They got 2 runs. They're up 2-0. And yes, Griffin immediately gave him 3 runs. And then, yes, he gave up 2 more runs. But they battled back. Nathaniel Lowe, again, had 2 key hits in this game. He's fitting in just nicely. Joe Adell went 0 for 2 with a strikeout pinch hitting for Bazzana. But Chris Antonetti was 100% right, and this series proved it. Now, we're not going to judge, obviously, the Guardians' trade deadline. And if we were judging it based on 3 games, I'd say it's more like a C because, Yoho had a blow up in this game, and Foster Griffin wasn't great, and Adell had 1 good game, and Nathaniel Lowe has been pretty solid the last 2 days. So we're not going to grade it based on that. But for the most part, Adell and Lowe played well in the series. They contributed to the team. Adell on Tuesday, Lowe on Wednesday and Thursday, I would say. Yoho didn't contribute all that much on Thursday, and neither did Griffin. And Foster Griffin was calling his own game because the staff hadn't really had enough time to learn him, so they made it more comfortable on him to call his own game. And guess what? He's got nobody himself to blame for that. He threw a couple middle fastballs that got absolutely destroyed, a curveball that got absolutely destroyed. Didn't execute. Struck out 6. He threw a lot of strikes. He ended up walking 2. It wasn't a great debut. But the guys in this roster, the guys that got to get it done. And you're asking a lot, I guess, of a very young team when it comes to guys like Bazzana and DeLauder, who are key parts of this team, and Angel Genao, who is starting at multiple positions. Now, he also had a hit in this game and a strikeout, but he's had a great debut so far. But the fact of the matter is, Rhys Hoskins, Angel Martinez, Brian Rocchio, Travis Bazzana, Chase DeLauder, Stephen Kwan, who, missed this game because he's a little banged up after running into the wall for that catch on Wednesday. Kwan's been doing his part since July 1st. He's part of the reason they struggled early in the year, but since July 1st, he's hitting over 400. So for the better part of a month, Stephen Kwan's contributing, and Chase DeLauder's been contributing. Travis Bazzana's kind of hit a wall a little bit. Angel has been struggling, even though he had a good hit in this game. P.D. Halpin had a nice game. Rocchio has been absolutely struggling. Bailey has been fine. He's had his moments, not great. Rhys Hoskins is definitely struggling. The guys that are here, and in the bullpen too, Hunter Gaddis, Cade Smith, who, did walk 2 the other night, Eric Sabrowski, Tim Herron, Matt Festa, even though people don't want him to be part of the team, Colin Holderman, Craig Yoho, Saccone, who's in the bullpen now, who we're going to give a little bit of grace to for a new role and pitching for the first time in over 2 years on 2 days rest. But all the guys that are here, he's 100% right. And this includes the coaching staff too, by the way. All the guys that were here, you brought in, it's a 26-man roster. You brought in 4 new players. So that's roughly a quarter, not even a quarter of your roster changed. The guys that were here, he was 100% right, have to get it done. Angel now made a critical error on Wednesday. Brian Rocchio's been here. He made a critical error. Cade Smith walked 2 batters and blew a save. And Rocchio made the error in that game. Okay. Guys who didn't hit with runners in scoring position were not Nathaniel Lowe. They struggled with that in this series. The guys that are here are the ones that have to do it. And nobody wanted to hear that because everyone thought it was going to be a trade deadline excuse for them not to bring somebody in. They went out and had a slam dunk trade deadline. If you look across the league, I've said it multiple times, they went across the league. They had the best trade deadline. The Dodgers obviously got Tarek Skubal, whatever. They had a better trade deadline than the White Sox. They had a better trade deadline than the Twins. That doesn't always guarantee wins because look what we say about the offseason every year. We always look at who's the offseason winner. Do they win in the season? Not always. No. The Tigers this offseason went out and added Framber Valdez and Kenley Jansen. And everyone thought, that's going to be a great addition. They're going to win the division running away. Guess what? Didn't happen for the Tigers. They had to trade Tarek Skubal, and they're playing out the string, even though they're playing better recently, better than the Guardians are. So making all these big transactions doesn't always win you games. You know what wins you games? Clean, error-free defense, hitting with runners in scoring position, having a solid bullpen, running the base as well, getting a bunt down when it's called for. I normally hate bunting, but when it's called for, you have to get it down if you're going to do it. Sack flies, hitting the cutoff man. Those are the things the Guardians just aren't doing. So Chris Antonetti was 100% right when he said the guys that are here have to be the ones to get it done. No one or two players is going to change the trajectory. And you want to know what? This series proved him absolutely right. The new guys, for the most part, at least two of them, did their job at different times in this series. And they still lost. And they had chances to win at least one. All right, we'll get back to, is the sky falling for the Guardians? Is this the same team for the last 2 years that won the division? What has changed? Can it be turned around? And later on, we'll get into whether or not this is a must-win series against the Chicago White Sox as they are battling the Boston Red Sox ahead of a huge series in Chicago. This episode of Locked On Guardians is brought to you by FanDuel. Baseball fans, you could think you know who's hitting a home run here on Friday. FanDuel's giving you a free chance to. A big thank you to our friends at Amazon for today's limited break. This back-to-school season, spend less on your kids with Amazon because we all know that the back-to-school shopping experience is crazy. You get your list, and it's got a couple items, but then you got supplies and clothes and lunch gear and all this tech, and then all of it adds up. I'll tell you what, as a kid, I hated back-to-school shopping. Mostly because it meant going back to school. But, you had to go to stores and different stores and get all these different things and spend a lot of time doing it. With Amazon, you get to go online and you get to just shop right from the comfort of your home and save some money. I think as adults, we'd prefer to have back-to-school shopping as one of our biggest gripes, right? But online, you're able to do it by saving some money in the comfort of your own home. And that's a win for adults, I think, for everybody who's got kids going back to school. So you can spend a little bit more time just kind of enjoying the summer. Maybe if you're a parent, you want your kid to go back to school. But either way, spending less money is always a win. With Amazon's low back-to-school prices, just spend less on your kids because every dollar you don't spend on them is a dollar you haven't spent on them. Shop back to school at Amazon. Spend less on your kids. As always, thank you for making Locked On Guardians your first listen today and every day, wherever it is that you get podcasts. We do appreciate you guys hanging out and talking Guardians with us every single day because we're bringing it every single day because of you, because you want to listen to the team, whether they're playing good or you want to gripe and go through some therapy sessions. If you want more places to interact, more places to learn new information, have conversations, maybe get some therapy out, check out the Everyday Club. Not only does it get you ad-free episodes of Locked On Guardians, it also gets you access to the private listener Discord where you can chat with other Guardians fans, other listeners to the show, myself, Jeff, and there is a Discord channel for every single podcast on the network that has a Discord channel right now, so you can go check out the White Sox, the Red Sox. We had a White Sox fan pop into our Discord, kind of talking some smack on Wednesday night, and honestly, not undeserved. You also can get the free texting the texting service included, where you get updates sent right to your phone when we get news, information, other thoughts that are going on as well. We answer questions and do mailbags. We also do about monthly insider chats on Google Chat where we just kind of sit back, talk ball, off air. It's a lot of fun. So check out the link in your show notes. Go to lockedonguardians.supercast.com to sign up and learn more. And you get a free 7-day trial when you sign up. All right. So the roster is not broken. Like I said, the additions were good for the Guardians. I'm watching the White Sox and Red Sox play as I record this, and the White Sox are up 7-6 in the 8th, and there's one out, and they got a runner on. The Red Sox had a good trade deadline. They're playing really well. The guys internally with the Red Sox got better. They went on and added Adley Rutschman and Curtis Mead, who got hurt. Rutschman's still hurt. They added Eric Miller. The Red Sox had a good trade deadline, and they might get Roman Anthony and Garrett Crochet back. We'll see. But, this is a team not long ago, the Red Sox, that fired their manager, that had a lot of internal turmoil. They were playing terrible. Everyone said they were going to sell. Everybody wanted to trade for, different guys in the Red Sox. Well, they turned it around. Internally, they turned it around before the deadline because, honestly, they were going to be sellers. And they were buyers because the team turned it around first. It was the guys that were there and with a new manager. And I'm not advocating the Guardians fire Stephen Vogt, but something seems strange here. And it may not be on the staff, okay? Yesterday, on yesterday's show, on Thursday's show, I talked about bullpen usage, and I complained about, Why did Matt Festa come in the 10th inning with a runner on in extra innings, with the runner on second rule when you're tied and you need strikeouts? That would have been a better fit for Colin Holderman. Well, turns out they stayed away from Colin Holderman on Wednesday as best they could. He warmed up to go into the 11th inning when that never happened because he's been under the weather for the last 2 days. So they wanted to stay away from him if they could because he's been sick. He ended up pitching on Thursday, pitched fine. But those are things that not every, we don't always get information on. They're not, coming out before the game and saying, oh, Colin Holderman's sick. He's not going to pitch today. They're not saying that pregame. They're not telling their manager that, all that kind of stuff. They're certainly not telling the media and the fans that. But those are examples of what goes on behind closed doors and in the clubhouse. That are things that, we're not always privy to when it comes to decision making. We can armchair quarterback and Monday morning quarterback all we want, but those are details. And I'll be totally transparent with you. I'm not in the clubhouse. I have a full-time job. I do this on the side as a second job and a labor of love. I'd love to do it full-time. It doesn't pay enough for me to do it full-time. I have contacts. I have friends in the media who are in the clubhouse, and I chat with them all the time about what's going on to try to pick up their vibes, whatever, and share information with them. But that's not, firsthand knowledge. So that's one of those things that I don't have. And that's one of the things, nobody had until after the game. That was an explanation after the game. So those are things, just one example of things we need to be aware of. But that doesn't really 100% absolve what's going on. I do think you have to lay some of the blame at the feet of the players who are not executing, but also the coaching staff. Now, Stephen Vogt is the two-time manager of the year. 2024, he was a newbie. He had never managed before. The first 2 weeks of the season, they lost. Shane Bieber had 2 really good starts, never came back and pitched for them. They had a disastrous starting pitching staff that was held together by Tanner Bybee, Ben Lively, and eventually Matt Boyd at the end of the year, and bubblegum and tape and super glue. And the bullpen was great. And they got to game 5 of the ALCS. Now, obviously, the Manager of the Year award is voted on before that. And I've said before, the Manager of the Year award is one of those narrative-based things that we have never have coming into the year. It's always going to somebody who has bad expectations or no expectations. 2024, there was no expectation. 2025, there was. You thought there's no way he's going to win it again. Well, he did help the Guardians stay together through being 15 and a half games out of first place, a 10-game losing streak, losing 2 players, including their all-star Hall of Fame track closer, to gambling allegations that got him out of baseball. And they came back and they chased down the Tigers. Now, the Tigers had to play very badly for the Guardians to come back, but the Guardians nonetheless did get it together internally. They made no additions to the trade deadline last year. The team pulled itself out of the rut and got back into the race and won the division. This is still the same staff. Now, they replaced Craig Alvarez with Tony Arnerich from the Mariners, who obviously went on to go to coach the Baltimore Orioles or manage them. And then they also had to replace Kai Correa, who was the infield coach, who went to the Mets. I think that's a bigger loss than most people realize. He was the infield coach. He was the spring training coordinator. He was kind of the schedule guy laying out. Maybe they need more infield practice. Maybe they need to do more things that are focused. I don't know. Again, these are things that even media is not going to pick up on because there's maybe pregame stuff. Maybe they need to do those things. Maybe those things need to be asked because it seems like right now, I don't have to tell you this if you're watching the games, but it seems like the days where the Guardians hit the ball, like the last 2 days, they play poor defense or the bullpen implodes. The pitching's not good. And then there's games where the pitching and the bullpen is good and the defense is okay, the least, and they make a base running error or they just don't hit with runners in scoring position, which happens. And I'm honestly at a point with the offense now where it's like, okay, they're getting guys on base. We are complaining constantly about hitting with runners in scoring position. They're getting guys on. They're having opportunities. And yes, there's not a whole lineup here to do a whole lot about it, especially when you look at 7, 8, 9 in the lineup most nights. But I feel enough at this with the offense at this point where they're getting guys on. I think the dam is going to break at some point where it's going to be a little bit less tense and frustrating with runners in scoring position. But they've got to play clean defense. They've got to get the bullpen in order. They got to make good decisions, whether it's base running or, cut off plays, all that kind of stuff. Stephen Vogt's the same guy that led this team back last year and won the division in 2024. The question I have is this. The Guardians are 2 games under 500 for the first time since last season. And last season, the Guardians did dig themselves a rut and had to come back. So this is 2 straight years the Guardians have kind of, kneecapped themselves in the race, right? Why does that keep happening? Why do the Guardians keep putting themselves behind the 8 ball at midseason like they did a year ago and this year? That's the question you got to ask. The comebacks are great. They're exciting. But you have to ask, why do the Guardians keep putting themselves in this situation? Because in 2026, this is arguably a better roster, right? I think we can all agree Travis Bazzana at second base, even through his struggles, better than Gabriel Arias and Brian Rocchio a year ago. Chase Water, better than John Kenzie Noel and Nolan Jones a year ago, right? Stephen Kwan was better first half. He's been better second half. Just kind of looking up and down, again, down the roster. Now, obviously, Jose Ramirez is a big part of it. I'll talk about that in the third segment. Angel Martinez up and down. Rocchio's better this year than he was a year ago, despite his struggles right now. Bailey's certainly better than Bo Naylor a year ago. Hedge is certainly better than he was a year ago. The roster, now you have Joe Adell, Nathaniel Lowe. I wouldn't call Reese Hoskins an upgrade. That's a problem. But the lineup is better. The rotation is more complete and better. The bullpen is arguably the same at the very least. This on paper is a better roster. Now, games aren't played on paper, and that's on the players and the staff to get it done. So you have to keep asking. This is a better roster than it was a year ago on paper. How do they get the most out of it? How do they stop putting themselves behind the 8 ball at midseason and play like they should, like Chris Antonetti said, support these guys and improve, because that's where it's who's going to take us where we want to go. All right, we'll get into more about Jose Ramirez. I've got some minor league updates and injuries and notes to get to. We'll talk about this White Sox series ahead and ask, that is a must-win series. This episode of Locked On Guardians is brought to you by FanDuel. Baseball fans, you could think you know who's hitting a home run here on Friday. FanDuel's giving you a free chance to call your shot with daily dingers. Very easy to play. You make your free pick for who you think's going to home run in their game. And if you're right, you get a profit boost using your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. And you can make a free pick every day throughout the rest of the Major League Baseball season. Daily dingers, it's another fun way to stay engaged with every game across the league, whether you're following your favorite team or keeping an eye on whatever matchups are going on. Every game has someone capable of going deep, and you get the chance to make your prediction for the first pitch. I took Junior Caminero against the Mariners. May not be a great pick, but hey, if he hits a home run, it'll burn less because I'm going to profit from it. As for the Guardians, they are favored by 1.5 runs in Chicago, believe it or not. But the over-under is 8.5, and it's against the lefty. So I don't really know. I think I'm going to take the under, but I'm going to say the Guardians get off the schneid. Why not? So you're ready to play your game today. Join all the action on FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play daily dingers. Make your free pick on who's hitting a homer, play ball, swing with the fences with FanDuel, an official Major League Baseball partner. Keep up to date with all things Guardians and Locked On Guardians by hitting the bell on YouTube and subscribing. Get notified of reaction videos to every game, every bit of news that's relevant, and you get notified of when our shows go live each time. And you also can auto-download on all your favorite audio platforms. We are free every day wherever you get podcasts on audio, and that keeps the show in your feed no matter what. So if you get behind, you can catch up, or even if you don't want to listen every day because this team is just causing you to pull your hair out, which I understand. If you auto-download it, it still helps us out. So do that, even if you're not going to listen. We'd appreciate that. The Jose Ramirez thing. So that's one of the guys here that, honestly, if Jose Ramirez doesn't turn it around, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe he is the one guy that has to get it going. And again, offensively, like I said before, I think the dam is going to break loose at some point. There's enough talent here, between, well, Martinez is streaky, but Lowe and Adell and Jose and DeLauder and Bazzana and Genao's up now. And Bailey is usually pretty good in clutch moments. I don't have the stats in front of me, but go look. For his career, he's been pretty good with runners in scoring position. I think there's enough there to get it done if they play clean baseball and the bullpen gets it together. I think Griffin will be fine, although it's hard to incorporate. This is why teams are careful to not trade for catchers at the deadline, because it's hard for them to mesh well at the end of the year. And pitchers, maybe that's the same thing. That's why, Tarek Skubal is a alien. But he lost his first start with the Dodgers. Sometimes it's hard to fit in. Dodgers, by the way, are 0-5 since they acquired Tarek Skubal. Now he pitched once, but just to show you how these things go. Unfortunately, the Guardians, though, they are 6-13 since the All-Star break, and that is not the direction you want to be going in. And they're also 1-4 in the month of August. So there goes that. Jose Ramirez, if he doesn't turn it around, I don't know what's going to happen because, Tom Hamilton was saying during the broadcast on Thursday that his left wrist, bottom of his left hand is black and blue. It's ugly. Rhys Hoskins called it grotesque. He's playing through a lot of pain. He went 1 for 3 with a walk, scored 2 runs, so he's contributing. Defensively didn't have any issues, but it hurts. Like his wrist hurts, and I don't know if a 10-day stint on the IL at this point is gonna save him or help him. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But this is pretty clear. This is one of the reasons Angel Genao is up here, because if they do have to sit Jose, every couple of games because the wrist is just too much and he might have to come off the bench, Genao is a much better option than Gabriel Arias. Now, that I'm not saying anything most people here don't agree with, but that obviously played into it a lot. I'd said when the move was being in the making that him coming up meant something for Jose's wrist, whether he went on the IL or they needed better insurance than Gabriel Arias. And that is obviously 100% true. And hey, Angel Genao so far, 2 games in a row. I said that if they called him up, he's got to play more often than not, 4 or 5 games a week to make this worth it. And so far, 2 games. He's played 2 different positions, but he's played. So now it's a question of if Jose Ramirez can be, I don't think he's going to be 100% at this point, but he's got to play through this and he's got to get better somehow. I don't know what the odds are, but that doesn't matter because, if Craig Yoho and Slade Ciccone and Tim Herron and Eric Sabrowski are pitching bad and Matt Festa's pitching bad and the defense isn't clean, it doesn't really matter. But Jose is one of those guys Chris Antonetti is talking about. But, of course, he's, trying to play through pain. And if he doesn't play, I don't know. The Guardians may not stand the chance anyway, so maybe it doesn't matter. All right, I've got a couple more minor league notes I want to get to at the end here, but I want to talk about this White Sox series ahead. So heading into this White Sox series, and I'm watching that game, the White Sox are still up 7-6 on the Red Sox in the bottom of the 8th, but the Red Sox have a runner on with 2 outs. The one advantage the Guardians do kind of have going in is that the White Sox are playing a night game in Boston and have to get back into Chicago for this Friday game. The Guardians are already in Chicago as I'm recording this at 10 o'clock on Thursday. So they get a head start on getting to Chicago. That is a little bit of an advantage. The Guardians the Guardians are 3-4 against the White Sox this year. So they have 6 games left. The Guardians need to get the tiebreaker. So if you win 2 this series, you'll be 5-5. And that gives you a chance to finish the season series against them the next time with 3 more games. The winner of that series is going to hold the tiebreaker. So they're going to have to win 2 this weekend somehow. And in regards to the Guardians coming back from 15.5 down last year, they are right now 3.5 back of the White Sox. They'll either be 3 games behind the White Sox going into the series. They'll be 4 back, depending on how this game turns out. On August 7th, a year ago, this team was 6 games out of first place. So they're still in a better spot than they were a year ago. And I would say the Tigers of last year at this point, even though they were struggling, are still a better team than the White Sox. That doesn't mean I don't think the White Sox are good. I'm not taking them seriously, but the Tigers were definitely better than the White Sox a year ago, at least on August 7th, I would say. The difference is, though, the Guardians were 60-55. I'm sorry, they were 59-55 on August 7th. This year, they're 57-59, 2 games under 500. The calendar is ticking down. There are how many games left in the season? There are 116 games played so far. So the problem is we are running out of days here at this point. 52 days from this recording, the season ends. So like I said yesterday, the Guardians are running up against the calendar. They have to take 2 or 3 in this series. Luckily, you get Parker Messick and Gavin Williams, the guys who have been your 2 best starters in this series, if they can play defense behind them. Noah Schultz had a good start his last time out. He's pitching on Friday. He has been struggling lately. His Savant page is not good. Lucky for the Guardians, he is not an elite changeup guy. His changeup's been getting hammered this year. He doesn't throw it a lot. He's got a good fastball, but this will be a series where Joe Adell needs to shine because the Guardians are facing two lefties in Noah Schultz and Anthony Kay. So big series for Joe Adell. You're not going to like it, but we're going to see a lot of Rhys Hoskins. He's got to come through. Jose may have to sit a little bit because his wrist hurts more from the batting from the right side than the left side. So again, Angel Genao is going to be counted on. Then Sunday you have Cantillo and Davis Martin. Davis Martin got shelled against the Red Sox, but fortunately for the Guardians, the Red Sox are better than they are right now. And Cantillo has just been average his last couple of starts. He was good his last start. He got burned a little bit by the defense. Shocking, right? Bottom line, you need to win the Messick and Williams game straight up. You have to. You got to at least come home and have the season series tied for the last series of the year against the White Sox they play. So the winner of that at least holds the tiebreaker. You know, if they go down in this series four games down, if the White Sox finish this out, they win two of three. You know, they come home 3 games out. So they come home a little bit better than they went in. If the White Sox lose this game, you're 3 out and you win 2 of 3, you're 1 out. You're in much better shape and everything looks much better. You go into the series losing 2 of 3, tiebreaker is going to be a problem. You have to sweep its tiebreaker at the end of the year. And then the clock ticks down even more. So this is a must-win series for the Guardians. Make no doubt about it. It is. All right, a couple more notes, too, on injuries and streaks. So Nolan Schubart's on-base streak ended on Thursday night at 58 games. Really good streak for him. We're going to get into more of this later. But he had a 58-game hitting on-base streak that started on May 17th. 58 games, hit 305, 442, 620, 17 homers, 12 doubles. He also had 81 strikeouts, 52 walks. We'll get into more of that next week. Uniker Caceres hasn't played since his hamstring. I think that's hamstring injury is what it sounds like. He hasn't played since coming out of the game August 1st. That stinks. Jace Laviolette also hasn't played. He had 2 at-bats on August 4th. He got hurt on July 31st and has barely played since then. That's a knee issue for him. Braylon Doughty is not pitching this week. He had arm fatigue. He was coming back to Cleveland. So that's another stinky one, too. And then, Ralphie Velasquez, 6 homers in his last 9 games. That's fun. All right, we'll be back on Monday to talk Guardians White Sox and the biggest series of the year. It's going to determine a lot. We'll get into more minor league deep dives as well, whatever else goes on. White Sox can't catch a break. Joey Bart, the catcher they just acquired, also just got a hand fracture. So they are down Kyle Teal and Joey Bart now. That team is burning through catcher depth injury-wise. All right, we're out of here. Thanks for listening. Please download daily. It helps. Rate, review. Appreciate everybody who's leading all that kind of stuff. And we'll be back with you on Monday, hoping for a little bit less frustration. Go, Guardians, go.